Hello there, it's Ebird Online, and I'm back with another review. And today I'm going to be reviewing 90 Day Fiance Happily Ever After, Season 5, Episode 11, Public Displays of Contention. And who better to start with than Elizabeth and Andrei. Thank you so much to everyone that supported me thus far, and thank you for giving me all of your unpopular opinions. And stay tuned this week for a video or two discussing all of these. And if you've yet to do so, please don't forget to press subscribe and join the Ebird family. And you can also follow me on Twitter at mbird99. So without further ado, I give you Elizabeth and Andrei, and unfortunately for us, Elizabeth's family. So we first catch up with Elizabeth and Andrei, and they're on the way to the airport to pick up her mum, her sister Jen, and stepdad Walter. Andrei promises to behave himself, unless of course her family are rude. So in other words, you have no intention of behaving yourself. Thanks for that, Andrei. Thanks for nothing. And when they disembark the plane, Elizabeth says, "Jen, you look like you're walking out in France." And Jen says, "I wish I was in France." And she continues, "Moldova is everything I thought it would be. Sad looking, gloomy, and not a good European destination." Moldova thinks the same about you, Jen. And you can tell she's spoiling for a fight because she hasn't actually seen anything of Moldova as yet. So how do you know? And so they all get into the car, and Jen wastes no time in jabbing at Andrei. She says, "It's so dark and gloomy, and it's only 4 p.m. It's so depressing." And Andrei says, "Jen, it's November." And it's unbelievable that she starts her cheap shots right from the airport. Jen, most places in Europe are getting dark at 4 p.m, including the UK. But however dark they become, they still couldn't create the kind of black cloud that you carry around with you. And Andrei said he doesn't mind if they're rude to him. Don't worry, they will be. But if she's rude to his family, he won't put up with that. What are you going to do, Andrei? Offer her to go outside? So everyone's going to be staying together at the Airbnb, along with Chuck and Charlie. And I guess they must all get on very well because obviously Jen's mum is with her new partner. And of course Chuck's there, so interesting. And when they arrive at the Airbnb, yet again, they've got an effusive welcome because Andrei's mum has made a massive feast and she does the Moldovans proud. So they all sit around the table and eat food and they all start talking, and then the Moldovans decide to sing for them. So they're all quite jovial and convivial, and they're all smiling, and it seems that they're all getting on. Elizabeth is really pleased, and I think a little bit relieved, that everybody seems to be getting on very well. Elizabeth, give it time. It's only been a couple of hours. And so next time we catch up with these guys, all of the Americans are sitting around the table, and they are basically running Moldova and Moldovan food. Jen moaned, "I've been here a day and a half, and I'm starving." Lack of intelligent conversation, Jen. No surprise there. She continues, "The food's disgusting. There isn't anything that I can eat. Jen, you're sitting at a table with croissants and fresh fruit." And it seems she wants to moan for moaning's sake. And then Chuck chimes in. He says, "When you have to ask what's that, and what's that, and what's that, and what's that, the food isn't good." No, Chuck. When you have to ask what's that, and what's that, and what's that, and what's that, you've forgotten the food from the previous 2 nights that you've eaten. You clown. And then Charlie said, "This pig fat's disgusting." Oh, Charlie, don't talk about Chuck like that. Oh, right, you mean the Moldovan food. Well, then just don't eat it. And guys, Charlie is just so rude. And then Jen says, I've had a thought. Maybe they eat this kind of food and all of the scraps because they're so poor. And then Chuck says, "Yeah, I think that's what it is. We're eating their peasant food." And guys, I can't believe that they're saying all of this on camera because Andrei's parents have been nothing but gracious and polite, and they've literally gone out of their way every time to create a massive feast. They're obviously not massively rich, but they pull out all of the stops. They're giving you their Moldovan food. Fair enough, I can understand if you don't like it and it's a little bit different, but there's no need to actually be rude about it on camera. It simply can't all be inedible. And then Charlie and Chuck decide to misrepresent the events of fight night. And Charlie says, yeah, we got into it." "You didn't get into it, Charlie. You tussled like a pair of girls." And Charlie's the villain who plays the victim so well. And Charlie said, "I simply asked his friends to tell me some stories about his past." And Andrei shouted, "Shut up or I'll take you outside." And then Chuck continued, "Yep, and he told me, pack your effing bags." And Charlie boo-hooed, "He invited me to go outside." Charlie, that's probably the only place you've ever actually been invited. You ridiculous troglodyte. And Chuck said, "We met up with him and he apologised." And Charlie said, "Well, he didn't really want to apologise. He said to me, I was wrong and you were wrong too." And the mum said, "This is terrible. Who does that? Who behaves like that? I can't believe what I'm hearing." "My love, don't believe it because it's all made up." And Jen said, "I'm so sorry that I missed all of this." "What, you're sorry you missed a fight?" "Don't worry, Jen. I'm quite sure you possess the ability to cause many, many more." And Charlie tells of his new plan. He tells them, "I managed to get Marcel's number and I'm going to try and meet up with him and find out a few more facts about Andrei." And you guys, I can't believe how much they've misrepresented this fight. They made out as if they asked a few simple questions and Andrei just lost his shit. He didn't. You asked the same question again and again, and you kept on asking, why did you leave here? Why did you move to Ireland? You only married Jen to get from Ireland to America. You just wanted a green card. That's why he lost his temper. And it seems like being an effing liar appears to be an essential part of Charlie's remit. And guys, this is absolute proof to me that Charlie and Chuck know what they did was a little bit over the top at least, because they didn't tell the full story and they omitted 90% of what they said when they were repeating the story to the girls. If you have to lie, you know you've done something wrong. And they discuss who was right and who was wrong. And as for the Ebird, I don't like Charlie or Andrei, ergo I'm the real winner. So the following day, the girls are all going wedding dress shopping. Accompanying them will be Marcel's wife, Ina. Elizabeth explains that for the first part of the ceremony, she's going to be wearing a traditional Moldovan dress. And so they go into the shop and they decide to look around at a few of the dresses, and no sooner had Elizabeth gone to try some of the dresses on when Jen started up again about Andrei, and she continued with her barbed comments. And she says, I can't even believe we're doing this, considering what Andrei has done. And she sits down with Ina, and they decide to have a little conversation using Google Translate. And Jen asked what happened the other night with the fight. And Ina said, well, Andrei's very impulsive and we told him he had to calm down, but he just wouldn't. And Jen said, have you ever seen him act like that before? And then Ina tells producers that when she first met Andrei, she and he didn't get on and they had quite a few problems. And she said it's now been about 2 years since she saw him, but it seems as if he hasn't changed. If anything, he's become even worse. And they all decide to get one of the shop assistants to translate. And Ina says to Jen, I don't know what Elizabeth sees in him. I don't know what they have in common. And Jen and the mum said, we know, that's what we think. And Ina said, I don't know how she lives with him. And Jen said, same here. And the mum was laughing. Ah ha ha ha, ah ha ha ha, that's exactly what we think. Ah ha ha ha. And the worst part of all this was the laughing, as if they're all in on the joke. And mid-slating session, Elizabeth snatches back the curtain of the changing room and she says, I can hear every word. And guys, I couldn't believe this. I thought she'd gone to the other end of the shop or something and couldn't hear what was being said. How rude that you would, whilst someone's trying on a wedding dress, be sitting there slagging off the person's partner. And Jen said, we're just trying to understand your husband. And Elizabeth is incandescent with rage. She says to producers, Jen is talking shit to Ina about Andrei. And not only that, she's using the stylist to translate so that she can talk the shit more effectively. That's not okay. And Elizabeth says, can we talk about this later? And Jen said, how are we going to talk about this later? We never get to see Ina. And Elizabeth said, you're ruining this moment for me. Elizabeth, I think you'll find the closer doing that. The Ebird's not much a fan of these wedding dresses. And the mum said, I can't believe what Andrei has done. And Jen fired at Elizabeth, you let him treat our dad and our brother like this. We come all the way to Moldova and this is what he does. And then you leave the restaurant with him. And the mum says, if he shows such a lack of respect for your family, how does he treat you? And Elizabeth said, I felt like the only thing I could do was to leave. That was the best course of action. And Elizabeth said, I've said all of this to him. And Jen said, really? Yes, I have. What, in this tone? Yes, in this tone. I know he acts like an asshole, but he's my husband. And Jen said, what are you going to do if all of this doesn't work out? All of what? The wedding and everything with Andrei. Well, if it doesn't work out, I'll just go home, said Elizabeth. And that's where we end things for this week. And so what conclusions does the Ebird draw from events this week? Well, Elizabeth's family of walking, talking mugshots are getting worse as the weeks go by. And they're irritating the Ebird because they're starting to make me side with Andrei. And who the hell wants that? Usually when you have to side with somebody like that, you know it's time to up the medication. But as the weeks go by, they're becoming more and more disrespectful and more arrogant. They keep going on and on about why he was in Ireland. But they've been married for 2 years already, so it's all too late, even if you find something out. Let's imagine he got thrown out of the police force. So what? As far as we know, he doesn't have a mugshot, so he hasn't broken the law. Unlike you, Chuck, and you, Charlie, those in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. And when they're not slagging Andrei off, they're slagging off his family and his country. There's literally no end to the smorgasbord of things they don't like. But it is quite a worry that Andrei's sister-in-law doesn't think very highly of him, and this part of the storyline hasn't been shone a light on previously. And this is very bad news for Andrei, because the last thing you want is somebody actually siding with your haters. And with Ines, it seems, the Americans have an ally. Yes, her family have got a massive superiority complex, but it does seem at the same time as if Andrei is no good. And everything we've seen from him so far, he's domineering, he's petulant, and he's rude and aggressive. But Elizabeth must beware of what Ines has to say. That's his sister-in-law, why ever wouldn't he get on with her? But my final thought is this. They've known Andrei for 2 years now. As far as I've seen, they've only ever seen the bad side of him and never the good, and that's perhaps because there isn't that much of a good side. And so armed with that knowledge, they're then surprised that when they're rude to him and disrespectful in front of his friends and family, he kicks off. Of course he was going to kick off. What did he think was going to happen? So their faux shock of, oh, I can't believe he's behaved like this, is quite strange. He's been an asshole since day one, so why ever would you be shocked by his behaviour? I think Elizabeth's family are toxic to say the least. And whilst they know that Andrei is not great, Elizabeth will always have to have contact with him because they share a child together, so they may as well try and be inclusive and as nice to him as possible and see what that elicits. If you're only going to be negative towards him, you're going to bring out the very worst. And as we all know, that's not hard to do. They've got an elitist superiority complex, but rumours are Chuck has made some of his money by nefarious practices, and Charlie's done a bit of time in prison, and it's alleged that at least some of their gains are ill-gotten gains. So I don't know how they can possibly think they're sitting on the moral high ground when at least some of their wealth is from nefarious activities. So let me know what you guys think. Do you think that Elizabeth's family continually push buttons and try to draw the very worst out of Andrei at every given opportunity, thus making him look even worse than he is? Even when he's on good behaviour, they're there pinching him and poking him and just hoping he'll react. I certainly do, and I just definitely don't think it's fair, and least of all it's not fair on Elizabeth, who unfortunately is stuck in the middle. So please put your comments down below. I look forward to going through them all, and thank you so much for listening. As usual, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and you can follow me on Twitter at Ebird99. You've been listening to Ebird Online. Ciao for now.